What's up, everybody? Welcome to Marvelous Music. I've got my coffee, I've got my water, and I've got my Matthew, Harper, and Josh. That's right, you heard it correctly. Not one, not two, but three guests on a very, very special edition of the podcast today. So with three guests, what the heck are we even going to be talking about? Well, today we're going to take you behind the scenes, not just of creating a score, which we will do, but behind the scenes of the creation of a show. So Matthew was my co-director and the composer for the score of a show that we co-directed, and then there were none. This has been 2 years ago now. And Harper and Josh were two of the leads in the show as well. And so I've known Matthew and Harper for about 5 years or so.
Something like that.
Oh, geez, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It's a long time.
I've known Josh for 15.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, we've known each other for a minute. So we all go way back, but the main thing we have in common for today's purposes is the show, and then there were none, which was 2 years ago. Real quick, before we even jump into any of that, though, I'm going to say let's just go around the room real quick and take like a minute and talk through like whatever your experience is with whether it's music or theater, performing. Matthew, tell us about yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Matthew Meadows. I am an actor, songwriter, musician, barista, all of these things. My experience with theater started when I was in high school, doing shows, and then some paid work, and then some stage managing, and then directing with Steven.
Hi, I'm Harper. I've been doing theater about as long as I can remember, so very long time. I got involved with Steven and Matthew at the Oldham County Arts Center, which I had done theater, dance, and music through high school. Then I kind of stepped more behind the scenes with Steven, looking at some stuff like charade, and then there were none, where we kind of like talked about things behind the scenes as well as on stage stuff. And then I went to Millikan University for theater and to minor in dance.
Hi, I'm Josh. My experience with theater is I didn't do any theater at all until junior year of high school. I auditioned for a show and got in it. And then I was like, oh, I really like this. So I'm going to try to do it a lot more. So then I just auditioned for every show that I could do. And most of the time I'd be in it like 4 at a time, all through the rest of high school. And then now I go to college for graphic design, but I still like to do acting on the side. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you really were in like multiple shows at a time all the time once you got started.
I was trying to make up for lost time,
which you totally did. Nice. All right, so again, the show that we all worked on together was And Then There Were None. If you're not familiar with And Then There Were None, and I'm going to lean on everybody here to make sure we get through this plot outline without missing anything major, but also trying to make it short. We'll see what happens. So And Then There Were None is based off of a book by Agatha Christie. I would argue it's probably like her most cynical, dark work.
1000%.
Yeah. In the original novel, everybody dies. In the adaptation that we did, which was just a script that we had found specifically for stage, it ended with Harper and Josh's characters surviving as the only two people who survived, which is why they're here, because everyone else is dead.
True.
It kicks off, you open up on this island, big mansion, conversation with like do you call them servants? Wait staff?
Yeah.
Like they're hired.
I would say hired
driver,
staff,
yeah.
hired wait staff.
Yeah. So you kick off with them, they're talking, and throughout the first act, you basically are introduced to 9 or 10?
10.
I think there's 10.
10
It's
people
10
total.
10 little
8
Indians.
people come in because, yeah. So you're introduced to your 10 main characters. It's just kind of interesting as they all filter in. You learn a little bit about them. They kind of present themselves in a certain light. And then they all come together for dinner. The host of the event is not there. And that's like a whole thing. They come together for dinner. And then after dinner, the lights cut out and a voice is heard. It's a record playing that basically accuses each of them of having committed a murder. And then they all have to basically figure out, like, okay, is it true? Did these things actually happen? Various people are trying to say that they didn't. Other people are just owning up to it out of hand and admitting to what they did. Pretty quickly, one person dies. and then the next day another person dies, or another 2 or 3 people die. And then by the 3rd or 4th day, you're down to like 3 people and then 2 people. And so it's essentially everyone's trying to figure out who's killing them off before they die, with limited to no success. And I think that's pretty much the plot in a nutshell.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the plot too is like, not only do you have these characters who quote unquote know the person who invited them to this party or whatever, but they don't know the people around them. And so as they hear this stuff about each other, and as this stuff starts to come out, they begin to like form their own hypotheses about, okay, this person is the killer. And so it creates this really like, I think like mysterious aspect that not only that we don't know, like audience wise, doesn't know who the killer is, but also the people who are in the show don't know. Like the characters don't have any idea.
Mm-hmm. As an audience member, you're trying to figure it out at the same time as the cast, which is cool. As far as where it came from to do this show and just sort of the creative process to get it to stage, originally we weren't even going to be doing this show.
Right.
We were going to be doing a comedic parody of Hound of the Baskervilles. And we even had a production meeting for that show.
We did.
With like our crew, and it was fine.
Yeah, I think we both at the end of that meeting were like, yeah, that'll be fine, I guess.
Yeah, there was not really any excitement for it. So I think as it got closer to auditions, we kind of talked back and forth a little bit, and we were just like, I don't know if we should do this show. Like, let's look for something else, because honestly, there's no excitement for it. And with what we had some really big ideas. Yeah. And it was like, if we're going to do this, there's got to be some passion behind it.
The show has to live up to the idea that we have of what it will be.
We switched and decided to do And Then There Were None, because they had actually been doing it as part of a class. Yeah. At the Arts Center that I had helped out with. And I was like, this is a pretty good script. I feel like we could make something interesting out of this. Kept the same crew, which was pretty much, except for you, Matthew, the same crew that we had for the show we did the summer before. So we all knew each other. We had all worked together well. I feel like we were all creatively really at the top of our game at that point too. So at least in my mind as a director, it was like, okay, this is a solid script. We're just going to put all these people together. No huge expectations, but it's going to be great because everyone's just going to do a really good job.
Kind of just like a see what happens mentality.
Yeah. But at that point, really had no idea or inspiration for like what we wanted the show to be, or if we wanted to say anything with it, or any kind of thematic material to it at all. We basically just had the script. I know what cracked it open for me was I saw the movie Hell or High Water, which is like a modern day Western set in Texas. And I was like, this is, And Then There Were None is a Western. Like, the tropes, the archetypal characters, they're like Western characters. So then I started picturing And Then There Were None as if it were set in like West Texas, middle of nowhere. And all the characters were like cowboy era characters. And the music in my mind was very like Western, golden age Hollywood Western type thing, along with like Johnny Cash, the American albums.
Specifically, God's Gonna Cut You Down. Yeah. The Johnny Cash song. Yeah. And I remember that for me, when we talked about this, that song was like really, and like the show is about like judgment and justice. Mm-hmm. And so that song for me was almost like a blueprint for how we were going to do this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we toyed with the idea of redoing the script and making it into a Western. And then it was like, no, that kind of defeats the purpose of keep the expectations low and just let everyone shine at their job. Like, that's going to put more stress than we need on this. So it was like, no, leave the script as is, leave the setting as is. But now we at least have like an entry point into the story. It ended up being a great decision to leave it like that, because then we could actually use other inspiration as well. And we weren't just stuck inside of a certain genre to work with. And I think because we left it the way it was, we got to use some of those Western elements. I know Western elements really influenced the score. And even just in some of the choices in directing, I think. And staging a little bit as well. but there were also elements we got to incorporate of like horror, golden age Hollywood type stuff. We just got to play with multiple genres.
And I think the fear with doing just like a specific like one genre like show was we would pigeonhole ourselves into doing just that specific thing.
Yeah.
And I knew that we did not want to do that. Mm-hmm. Whatever we did not want to do that.
Yeah. So can you guys kind of talk a little bit, because that's like the background of how we got up to planning it out, auditions, and then it was getting into rehearsal. But like one of the earliest memories I have of after we cast it was I met one-on-one with Brandy, who was another one of the leads. And then I met with you two guys to do just like a really casual rehearsal. So talk a little bit about, and it doesn't have to be stuff that directly correlated to me and Matthew either. It can include that, but like talk through creating your characters and your process in bringing the whole show together as well.
Well, since I played Vera, there was an ambiguity of whether she was guilty or innocent because if you don't know, she was a governess of a child and he ran out into the ocean and drowned. And there's the argument to be made like, well, she could have saved him, she could have not saved him. And then there was some like background of like she wanted to marry a man with money and the child was getting in the way. So there was like this ambiguity of, well, did she mean to do it? Did she not? Because we even in the beginning, we set that scene of me at the top yelling, did I scream Cyril or did I just scream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
You screamed.
So I was screaming for the kid and then the light cuts out and then the God Will Cut You Down starts playing behind that. So even then it's kind of starting like are these people really who they say they are? And are their actions what they're being told as, or are they something else? And I think that was a really hard thing for me because some days I was like, yes, she did it. And other days I was like, no, she didn't do it. So it was kind of like trying to pick the story that I was going to go with because both opened up really, really interesting avenues for me as the actor, but it also influenced how I interacted with other characters as well. And then it also influenced how like the ending kind of happens and like the kind of bittersweet, like, well, we're here now kind of.
What were things that like helped you put the character together through the rehearsal process, and whether it was direction, whether it was working off the other actors, what kind of helped with that?
Well, definitely you and I had a lot of conversations of like, well, if you did do it, then this is kind of cover up for it and all this, that, and the other thing. And then also playing off of like Josh was one of the characters that was like, yeah, I did it, like I did it, whatever. So like to kind of counterbalance that, to be like, no, I could never do that. Like I'm this like, not like pure, like wholesome, like woman, but like I could never do that. Like I'm not that. Mm-hmm. So just kind of trying to contradict the other people that were so like bold in their like, oh yeah, I did it, I don't care. But trying to like kind of thin it out and hide it, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most fun parts with like developing my character, I remember, is thinking of how he feels about every other character there. Because I remember us talking about like, you need to have an opinion about everyone. Like what do you think about them? And so I remember like writing out just like thoughts or emotions that like he might feel about the other one, whether it's just like, oh, that person's incompetent, or this person's like full of themselves, or like anything like that. So yeah, it was fun to like outline how I feel about each one specifically. And I feel like that helped me develop like his own personality, because how you feel about other people kind of like spans from how you really are. So like, who's he gonna clash with? Who's he gonna get along with? And just stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really interesting. I don't know if I knew about that. I remember that note of figure out how you feel about everyone there, but I didn't know that you went to that level of depth with it. That's pretty cool. Let's talk about creating the score a little bit.
Yeah.
We already mentioned that it kind of cracked open from that Western Johnny Cash type theme. What were some of those early conversations like on your end? And just kind of walk through coming up with ideas and what it was like to actually create the score for the show.
Yeah. So, I thought at the core of this show, this is like a horror. This is scary. This is supposed to be a mystery. This is supposed to be intense. And so the first thing I did was take that song, the Johnny Cash song, God's Gonna Cut You Down, and make a cover of that song. And the cover of that song is like gritty and like gross and weird, and it's like my voice has shifted like an octave down, and it's just like really eerie. And I have like 17 versions of that on my computer. And it's like, I was like, okay, what is going to be that captures this like vibe? And I remember taking it to you, the final one that I was like, okay, maybe this will work. And I remember saying like something like, oh, it doesn't sound great like in my monitors or like in my headphones, but let's see how it sounds here and we'll try it and figure it out. I remember the first rehearsal that we used it, I was like, holy crap, that sounds perfect. Like that's the perfect song for this. And so after that, I kind of wanted to almost score the show in real time. So I brought instruments, I brought stuff to rehearsals and kind of played around with stuff during rehearsals to try and get like, okay, how do I feel watching this scene and how do I translate that into the score? And I know for your guys' characters, Josh and Harper, there's a track that played under all of your interactions. And it's this like, kind of like the swing feel, and it's like a jazz feel with this really cool bass line, but it's so simple. And so when I was watching the show, the first couple times we did it and ran through it, I was like, okay, this needs to have some kind of tension here. And so matching the track and the scoring elements to the scene was the most difficult part of all of this. But doing it in real time during rehearsals made it 1,000 times easier. And I really think that at the end of that show, the score, it's not like, it doesn't shine through. It doesn't on its own stand up. But with the show and with the elements of like certain, I used a Nolan-esque thing. I did like a ticking clock throughout a lot of this stuff. And then I did, like towards the end, everything was fast. Like every song was fast to support the show rather than to be like, oh, listen to this cool like sound or like this cool track. Like I said, it doesn't stand up on its own because there's only like 6 or 7 or 8 like individual tracks. But in relationship with the show, it, I think, heightened a lot of the moments that we see in the show. And there's a scene towards the end where, and I think about this all the time, Justice Wargrave, who is one of the characters, and can I spoil the
You
ending?
can spoil it. That's
Okay.
The thing's been around for like 100 years.
Yeah, that's true. So the ending, Justice Wargrave is the person who is killing all these people because essentially all these people are people that the law can't bring to justice. Originally it's a he, but we made the choice to change it to a female character, which I think was awesome. But she has this moment at the end where she's like screaming and she's like, I have to bring these people to justice. And there's a track that I play under I made under that has this like Phantom of the Opera-esque like organ pounding. I got chills listening to it in preparation for because I was remembering that scene. And so I think for me, that's what I was most proud of with the whole thing was I can hear this track and remember exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I think, and going back to the original creation of the score, I think that my interpretation of what the actors were doing and also being able to, from a directorial standpoint, also being like, oh, this would be cool if this happened. And then making that happen not only on stage, but also through the score. So yeah, that's how that like creation of that went. Yeah. In a nutshell.
Yeah, and that's good because even as we were prepping this, I was like, I don't remember like a lot of the conversations we had about the score, but that makes sense now too. And I remember it now. You were doing it in real time, like as the rehearsals were going. And I think that definitely made a difference for sure. And because really, like you said, the score wasn't meant to take front and center, except in like a couple places. It really was meant to be underneath of and in support of the show. Hypothetically, if the actors on stage and as directors we were doing our jobs well, you would have gotten the tension from each scene that you needed to get just from what was happening on the stage. The music was just there to amp up the tension another few notches.
Right, and think about like a movie, like in Interstellar. It's like that is what it does in that movie too. It's like as big as that track, those tracks are, and as like dense as those tracks are, they only serve the purpose of lifting up what is happening on screen. Yeah, and so I think that's like any good score is going to do that.
And it's different when you're in theater as opposed to like film, because when you're doing film, like 99% of the time, you're not going to have the music that ends up in the film playing underneath your performance. And have you guys done any film at all? Like even short film or like student film type stuff?
I haven't.
I have done a little bit. and it's like a whole nother beast to live theater. Like there are so many little aspects that go into it that you just would never think.
Yeah.
And then the not being live aspect too is like so different, because I don't know if Josh or you guys feel this way, but like I feed off of what they're giving me.
Yes.
And so like sitting in like a film where everyone's just like looking at you waiting for you to do something, it's just so different.
Yeah, it is. And so that's where this becomes an interesting question is, as a film actor, you don't get the benefit of a cool score underneath of what you're trying to do. As a theater actor, you may. It may not happen as much in plays or non-musicals, but in my shows, I always really wanted to do that and have that playing underneath as well. So how did having music underneath of your performances either alter or enhance, or did you not even notice the music when it was playing?
Well, I feel like music definitely like evokes emotion. So like it always like sets the mood. Whereas there'd be times when I was like so caught up in the scene that I wouldn't necessarily notice the music, but I feel like that was more in like the smaller, like less intense scenes, I didn't notice it as much. Whereas in like the other scenes, like it really like kind of guides like the emotions that you're supposed to be feeling. So it like immerses you in the world and helps you like bring out the emotions that you're supposed to bring out. It's almost this thing that like you notice to an extent to where it helps you, but like once you're into it, you kind of like forget that it's there because it's just like subconsciously like there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Which is that's almost like how the audience perceives it as well.
And I think that's almost exactly the point too. Like I was saying earlier, it's like it only serves to help. Like it shouldn't distract. And I think that's awesome that like it was that for you, because I know in like musicals and stuff, it's like sometimes it can be distracting, but this is not that. So it's like a completely different thing. So that's awesome.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
Kind of like Josh, like there are some places where I don't remember music being at all, and I think it's because I'm so like zoned in, like especially in the more like personal scenes. Maybe it was because she was trying to kill me, but I don't remember the organ thing, but that's really, really cool.
You were also screaming.
You were screaming.
I was
Very
also
loud.
screaming. That I did really do a number to the microphone systems on that one. But I think the score also, there were pauses, and I think those pauses also added a lot of like, whoa, something's about to happen. And I think that's equally as important as the score you're putting under it. And I remember like there were parts of the show where I would like deliver my lines really fast, and now I'm thinking about it, it was probably to the beat of some kind of like ticking clock or something without even realizing that I was doing it. I'm sure if we watch it back, like it'll be like
right on the beat.
Yep.
I remember one of the parts that always like stuck out to me was even being on stage and like hearing the music was like the last scene when we see the body and we realize it's one of us.
Oh yeah.
And I have to like go up the stairs. I remember during like the first few rehearsals, I was like, okay, try to like walk in time to like the drums. But then like after a few, it was just like, it just like came naturally to where like I wouldn't like think about it. But like the drums were still like going, and it was like it was making me like feel the yeah, like it, because it was like mimicking like your heart beating, but also like a ticking clock, and it was just like building like the tension and like the suspense. And I had to take like a few steps on the top section where I walked to look out and see the body, and I remember the really fast beats, and I took like 3 steps like all in time with them. And I don't know, it was like a really good feeling, but like yeah, I don't know how to, it just felt really good.
Yeah. By the time this episode comes out, we'll have talked about it on the podcast already. But one of the films that we'll talk about is Baby Driver, which heavily inspired the show we did the year before that, which was Charade. And since I've got you guys here, you guys could talk about that a little bit, because just for like the tiniest little bit of background on that show, as in the movie Baby Driver, we wanted the whole show to be on time and on rhythm with the score. And the whole thing had score underneath of it. And so every actor had to be in rhythm with the score the whole time. Every step, every gesture, every word had to be in rhythm with that score. What was that like on you guys as actors? Because that's almost like a hybrid between musical acting and play acting. That's
and dance
some other
almost.
Yeah, and so it ends up being some other kind of form of acting entirely.
I had a great time doing both. I really, really admire the way you blend music and like theater. Like, I mean, they obviously go together, but like both of them are kind of pushing the next like forward, if that makes any sense. Like, there's not one without the other. And it just makes a lot of sense to me. I liked Charade a lot too, because that was also kind of like a mystery kind of crime thing. And the music we did too, we did the metronome, and like you would walk on the beat and turn. And like we also did like 60s music throughout it as well, didn't we? Because of the period. So like you would go from that to like we were in a club, and then go back to like this like eerie like metronome music. And it really, really, well, it helped you know where you were in the play too if you're backstage, but it also just kind of like carried it through along with everybody else just like doing their part. Like it just pushed it forward.
I was definitely like more conscious of like, because I was thinking like, okay, this like has to be in time, because the ensemble was like this whole like moving part that like changed the set and everything like had to be like in time with the music. So it was more of like you're doing kind of like a dance in certain aspects, which we did have like a dance number too. So it definitely had to be in time to the music there. But yeah, I loved the whole aspect of like the moving ensemble. So like everyone's moving with like the perfect rhythm to the music, and the music is like the driving force. That's like, it's like this train and we're on it and the scene's going, and we just have to like, we have to go along with it, you know, but also make it happen.
Yeah. Comparing the two, it's almost like two different approaches to the scoring. Whereas in Charade, it was very much the things happening on stage had to be influenced and on the rails of the train of the score. Whereas with And Then There Were None, the score literally was created from watching what was happening on stage.
And that was that we had talked about that. That was like a conscious decision to not do that.
I feel like, now thinking about it, like Charade, the music influenced the physical aspects of the show more, whereas with And Then There Were None, the music impacted like the atmosphere and like the mental aspects of it more.
And I remember talking to Steven about this. It was like, we want the audience to be like on edge. Like we wanted people to be like like what's gonna happen now? Yeah. And I think we got that effect. To kind of talk about, again, it's like there was a conscious decision not to have the music be such a focal point of the show, and I think that's what the show like needed, and I really think we did a good job with that.
Yeah, and that's where kind of the horror inspiration came into the action on the stage and the music, to have this tension so that the audience is on edge and they feel tense this whole time. But then to take a cue from horror, we actually have to pay off the tension. So we can't just have like, oh, everything worked out and now the show's over, but I felt tense the whole time, because then the tension isn't really earned and you just felt uncomfortable the whole time. Whereas we wanted the tension to be steady and then build and build and build. And that's why we had that's why we did blood effects and like gore. Gore is a strong word. Depends on how close you were to the stage, if it was gore or not.
If you're in the splash zone or not.
Yeah. But especially that last kill at the end with Blore, where he gets clocked in the head.
Yeah.
And he just stumbles back out on stage with blood like dripping off of his face. And you can actually, like, when he falls to the ground, you can play it back and you can see like the blood like going off of his hand, and it like spikes off of the floor. It's insane.
And you can hear the people like gasp when he comes out.
Yeah. So and that gasp was exactly what we wanted. It was that payoff of the tension. It was like, oh, we were really scared something bad would happen, and
it did.
Oh my gosh, the bad thing just happened.
It exactly happened. Yeah. And if you look in my script, there are parts where we had talked about not putting music. And there were parts of the show, and Harper alluded to earlier, like pausing. In my script, there are like big letters, no music, like pause, because that was that was the intention, was to have the tension to have a resolution and then become tense again, and then resolve and then become tense again.
But there was never like a musical jump scare, like in a lot of like really cheesy horror movies where they like use the ooh and you like scream, but like I don't think ever got used. It was more of like the tension payoff kind of thing, which I really thought was kind of like, that's so smart, because cheap jump scares only work once or twice and they're funny, But
Mhm.
after that point, then it's like, okay, well,
The only loud noise in the show was a gunshot.
Yeah.
and me screaming
And
Mhm.
Harper screaming. Yeah.
several times.
I remember after like getting shot, that it was always really fun to get shot because it's like I just like let myself fall.
You're
I
so
rem-
good at that. That was so sick.
But I remember after getting shot, somebody in the audience screamed, and like that felt so rewarding. Like as I was falling back, like I heard it, and I was like, "Yes, we won." I was like-
We beat them.
Finally.
I was like, if they're scared, like that's the goal. Like I was like, yeah. So I was really happy, like when people afterwards like said how scared they were. I was like, yes.
That was a great feeling.
Yes.
People would come up to me and be like, "Oh my god, I thought they were gonna kill you." I was like, "Well, I have to do this show 3 more times, so I don't think Steven's gonna do that to me. Like, I'm gonna be fine." My mom was like, "I can't believe you let them do that." I was like, it's a controlled environment. Like, I'm fine.
It was very, very rehearsed.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
It's so intense though with like she gets out the news, but like even that whole because like our whole like argument until you
Yeah.
shoot me, and like the music's going in that, and then after you shoot me, it kind of like drops. And well, I drop, and then, but also everyone's kind of like, okay, what happens now?
it's
Like, I
over.
guess she's safe.
Everyone thinks it's over at that point.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then just silence.
Yeah.
And then she starts laughing from backstage.
Oh!
It's evil. That last 15 minutes of
Yeah.
that show, you can watch it to this day, and you just tense up.
I will. That is one of my this show is one of my most like cherished theater memories, just because of these like little moments.
Yeah. Well, I think that about does it. I think the thing that has stood out to me as we talk about it from a scoring perspective is whether it's a super detailed score or a more sort of in the background type of score.
Yeah.
Either way, it comes down to intention. And a good score is the way it is on purpose, or it does certain things and certain things for a reason. Whether that's in a ton of detail or whether that's, fairly loose and more improvisational, having an intention for the music makes it complement the show or film in a totally different way. So that's been one of the things that's kind of stood out to me. So whether it's the score, whether it's even like acting performances, intention is huge, doing things on purpose. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. This has been super fun. And I hope that everyone listening has really enjoyed this, getting kind of a behind the curtain view of putting together a score, putting together a show, putting together a piece of entertainment. The people that put together films, theater, whatever kind of entertainment you're into, there's a ton of work that goes into it. And knowing what goes into those pieces of art, I think, for me at least, help me enjoy them even more. So I hope that this episode has done that for all of you listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday.
And see.
Booyah.